And we're back with breaking news. Christopher Schurr's defense team has just filed a motion for a mistrial that they believe the prosecution has skewed the perception of the jury too far with experts the defense team disagrees with. Now, we want to remind you that we are on a 30-minute delay, so you have not heard this argument yet. We are working to bring you that as soon as we can during this break. Schurr's team has also filed a directed verdict. That's something we heard from our expert Andrew Rodenhouse this morning. It's a motion where the defense is trying to direct the judge to order Schurr's acquittal in the case, as they believe the evidence presented by the prosecution should be discredited and is not accurate. And we are just slowly learning details as to the judge's response to that. My producers tell me in my ear that the judge has not ruled in favor of a mistrial. She's still going through the directed verdict. This is something that Andrew Rodenhouse just talked about with us a couple moments ago, saying that this was a possibility that we could see this happen today. And if this had ruled in favor of the defense, the trial could have ended today. But as we know right now, and I just got word in my ear that she has also ruled against the directed verdict, meaning that this trial is going to continue. Again, this is developing and it's happening in real time. We're on a 30-minute delay, so you have not seen that motion filed yet. You also have not seen the judge talk about that. In about 30 minutes, you'll be able to see what we're talking about. But again, for those who are just joining us, the defense has filed a motion for a mistrial and directed verdict. Some of their complaints saying that the defense team, their experts that the prosecution brought on, they disagreed with them, bringing on prejudice to the case for the jurors. Also, with the directed verdict, asking for the acquittal of Schurr, and the judge has denied both of those. This is breaking news. We are still, as you can see, still learning some details as to what this means. You know, we'll be bringing in Andrew Rodenhouse later on to kind of talk about these things. Earlier when we were talking about the directed verdict, he said that this could help the defense in their appeal case. It shows that they are able to make progress in the case and it could help them. It'll be interesting to see how they are able to use the decision made by the judge as to these motions. Soon, Tanner and Emily are going to be joining me to kind of talk about this further. But again, breaking news, I believe that after the decision has been made that the court has gone back into a break. And so Okay, so now we're getting more word that the defense is now taking the stand. We're going to have Emily and Tanner join me right now. Again, that's 30 minutes away from us, but we have learned that the defense has taken the stand with their first witness. Guys, breaking news. Andrew told us this was a possibility that this could happen.
Yeah, certainly a possibility that I think was in the realm of the situation today, especially with how he was characterizing the witnesses, those two expert witnesses at the very end of the prosecution's case here. That was something because if you recall yesterday, the defense actually, that was kind of where this heated argument got into place, especially with Professor Stoughton, the use of force expert, who was talking about just that theory that officer, I forget what the exact term is, but except that police use of force, that one theory that we've been talking about.
That officer created jeopardy.
Officer created jeopardy. That was kind of the theory that was the bone of contention for them. And then, of course, more controversy once Nicholas Bloomfield got on the stand as well.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was really surprised because even with Andrew giving us the heads up that that could happen today, I didn't believe him. I did not think that we were on the path to that happening. Really within minutes of us having that conversation with Andrew. I don't think Andrew believed that was really a true possibility today. So I really just could not believe that as we were listening in and heard those very words that Andrew prepared us.
It was right there back to back, a mistrial motion there, and then of course she moved to have a directed verdict. Even when they came back to ask about why they were asking for that directed verdict motion there, she cited a Supreme Court law, and she said it's actually the judge, paraphrasing here, but the judge was like, it's funny that you're citing something from the Supreme Court and what she called the law of the land here. She says that, well, this directed verdict, we're listening to testimony from people commenting on the theories and practices of the law of the land. So very interesting, and of course the judge ending up denying both motions there, that mistrial and directed verdict, which again, that directed verdict would have been an acquittal for Christopher Schurr in this case.
Most definitely, and we're still learning as to the reason why she decided to go against those motions. I had to chicken scratch a lot of things. I missed a lot.
It happened a lot.
It happened very quickly. One of the things for the directive verdict, she had to list 3 different elements of this case. The one that I was able to catch before I got in here is that she says that while it's clear that Loya had the taser at the time, the rational effect shows that he was not going to use it at the time. And so she's saying that the evidence that the prosecution has brought on is showing that, yes, he was reaching or grabbing that taser, but it's not clear at that point that he was actually going to use it to create bodily harm. So it'll be interesting to see how the defense takes that information that she just said and uses it for their own case.
Yeah, as things were unfolding, the newsroom was sort of just in an array as we were all trying to capture exactly what was happening. What does this mean for the trial? I caught a little bit of that as well, Lauren. You mentioned those 3 elements that the judge was going through in terms of whether or not that directed verdict would be able to be met. I know the first one she said was easily met. I missed exactly what those details were. The second one, I know she said was also met, and she was saying that was showing that there was an intent to kill. She said, as a police officer, Christopher Schurr likely knew that putting that weapon to the back of Patrick Loya's head could likely lead to death. So that second element, she said, was met. The third that you mentioned, Lauren, showing that Patrick Loya, it seemed, was in possession of the taser, but was he able to actually use the taser in the position that they were in at that time? She said that was the only element that was still in question, and I believe why that motion was denied.
And our producer has just given us those 3 elements right here. She said the judge says the 3 elements must be proved in this case. First, that the defendant caused the death of Loya, which she says is proved on video. Second, that the officer had to have a state of mind where he intended to kill or cause great bodily harm, which she says is proven because Schurr shot Loya in the head. And the final aspect is whether this killing was justified. She says it's clear that Loya had possession of the taser, but a rational person could find Loya was not in a position to use the taser at the time of this killing. So again, those 3 elements, she's saying, hey, those are the 3 things the prosecution had to hit. They hit all of them.
Well, it's also something very interesting to hear what the judge is saying and her rationale for not declaring that directed verdict, because some of the things that she's talking about here are exactly what the defense was arguing during their cross-examination. They were trying to paint the picture that this taser was still harmful in the scuffle between Loya and Christopher Schurr. And again, to the judge's point here, it sounds like, as to what she has gathered from the evidence and the facts presented and the testimony here, that she does not believe that to be the case. And again, ultimately, she's basically placing the verdict back in the hands of the jury when she declares that directed verdict as a downvote there. So it's very interesting as to hearing her rationale, especially given all of the testimony that we've heard over the last 3 days.
Yeah, really kind of fascinating that she is, on the spot, obviously legally trained to make these sort of decisions.
Yeah.
But boom, here this motion is filed, and then right there in front of the court, she's laying out these 3 elements that need to be met in order to either approve or deny that motion. So to see that play out for us here this morning, where things could have taken a drastically different turn here in this case, where potentially was almost over, albeit this motion being denied.
And something that Andrew did say that we have to remember is that the defense could and did do this directive verdict, not only possibly to have Schurr acquitted, but also for their appeal, for after, if their decision's made not in their favor, to set up their appeal. So it's almost like playing chess in this situation to say, okay, if there's a possibility that we don't win this case, we have to set up the next move in case we do want to make an appeal, which I assume that they will.
Now, of course, I think we all know what a mistrial is, right? And just for those joining us on this breaking news that that the motion for a mistrial and directed verdict was shot down here after the defense made that motion. I just want to read off what a directed verdict is. That way we all can kind of understand what's going on. And I printed off some information that says a directed verdict is a judge's ruling that no reasonable jury could reach a verdict in favor of the opposing party due to insufficient evidence. It effectively ends the trial before jury deliberation, either acquitting the defendant in criminal cases or ruling for one side in a civil case. Of course, this being a criminal case that we've got here. And basically, that means that the judge finds that there is still evidence to be heard. At this point, she is saying the defense must try their case at this point. And of course, after we've heard the prosecution rest their case, it all kind of lies in the next 40 or so witnesses, if they call that many, as the trial continues.
And I'm glad you brought that up because there's so many large legal words that we don't know.
Yeah.
Having that description kind of puts into perspective for people watching to understand what exactly just happened. I mean, if she would have ruled in favor of one of those two things, we could be having a very different conversation right now.
Andrew was explaining that as well, kind of in layman's terms, essentially saying that this directed verdict is the defense saying, hey, the prosecution has not proved their case. Why should we even move forward with calling our witnesses if we're saying they haven't done a sufficient job? But again, the judge shutting that down, we are moving forward. The defense has started calling their witnesses.
Yeah.
I would have to imagine that the judge made this ruling based off of the testimony that we heard. And of course, I'm not trying to be speculative here, but again, we did hear from two witnesses that the defense was saying could have been, they weren't knowledgeable about Michigan law or Grand Rapids policies as a whole. And that's essentially what the defense was talking about with those two expert witnesses at the very tail end of the prosecution's arguments here. So I would have to imagine that she just wants to hear more and allow the jury every opportunity to be able to make their decision. Again, not trying to offer speculation, but in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of what it sounds like was happening.
Yeah, I heard some of the defense and what they were saying as they were making some of these motions, and I took some notes of her saying that those expert witnesses were applying standards that are just not applicable here in this case, and she felt that the jury had maybe heard too much at this point, and that was part of them filing these motions for the mistrial and the directed verdict. She also mentioned not being able to judge with 20/20 hindsight. The defense making that argument that that's what the jury in this case is being asked to do. So those were some of her notes in terms of why they were calling for that mistrial.
And now it's interesting to see who the defense decides to bring on. You know, we've already heard from people who have seen what has happened, both from a friend perspective, neighbor perspective. We've now seen experts. Who do you bring at this point? I mean, obviously, you guys don't know, but I mean, I would be curious to hear from Andrew later on to say, these are the type of people that you'd want to bring on after you file a mistrial and directed verdict, and you don't get that. Where do you go from here?
My next question, too, is that once you make this entire motion, this little, I'll call it a firework in the courtroom on the mistrial and, of course, the directed verdict, once you file that and it gets shot down, my question is how do you kind of reconcile with the jury? Like, we tried to end the trial, but okay, we have to keep going here. So with Andrew later, and again, we're talking about Andrew Rodenhouse, who's been an expert that we've been talking to. We spoke to him earlier this morning. I'd be curious to get his take on that, just to see kind of what his thoughts and feelings are, and how do you even proceed after something like this? Again, something that we weren't necessarily sure was going to happen today, but knew in the back of our heads it definitely could have.
Yeah, and if you're needing to catch up on what's happened this morning, you're seeing live the blog that we are keeping up to date for you with our Riley Mack inside the courtroom, telling you what's happening minute by minute if you're wanting to catch up on what's happened so far this morning on day 3 of the Christopher Schurr trial. So again, those motions, both the mistrial and the directed verdict, denied by the judge, and therefore that means this trial is moving forward as expected. The prosecution has rested and the defense has started calling their witnesses. We know that they have some 40 that they can call. We don't know if they'll call all of them, but there were some, mentions at the beginning of this that this could be a week-long trial. I think all of us thinking that is not going to be the case at this point.
Yeah.